I'm here with Paul Untegook. Paul, will you give us a better way of understanding the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act?
Yes, this piece of federal legislation that's had enormous impact and continues to have impact on the social, economic, and political shape of Alaska. So it's federal legislation, and like most federal legislation, it's not written like an essay, and it's certainly not poetry. It's not literature. It's made by committees, often several committees, sometimes over more than one congressional period. So that helps to explain why it's more of a detective effort as you read the legislation. Sometimes in legislation you won't get the main point written into it at all. It's something that you really have to think about and figure out. Well, what is this actually doing? Sometimes the title is entirely misleading with intention. In this case, it's not. It is about Alaska Native claims. So in that way, it's accurate. What it misleads people to think is that we, as Alaska Natives, wrote the thing, or that it's written by us. But this is written by Congress, and it actually has 5 major parties who helped to influence the legislation. State of Alaska, federal government, the oil corporations, conservation groups, and then Alaska Natives. As you read through the legislation, it's helpful to think about this in each passage or section, to ask yourself, well, who's benefiting by having this section included? An example would be with there's a section of ANCSA that says that over 80 million acres of lands would be considered for being set aside for conservation areas. Well, who benefits from that? It was the lobbying over time, a great deal of effort by the conservation groups. With another section of the legislation, it has this provision that says, once you get this money, you can't, as Alaska Native corporations, use it to politically influence anything, which is odd that it's in there. That's not standard boilerplate language. A part of the reason why the legislation was put in there is that that was in the interest of the state. The state of Alaska had many people who fought actively against ANCSA. And as this legislation is going to happen, they're thinking, well, once Alaska Natives have over $900 million, what's to keep them from using that to flood their elections and boot them out for having been opponents? So that's why it's in there. It actually didn't take into account some realities, which is Alaska Native politics is actually a pretty small room. And someone who's your opponent in one turn or one issue may become your partner in the next one. So that goes into the play of why would you sort of go after someone. Another part of it is that if you run someone out of office, the next one who comes in is an unknown. You won't know how they're going to play or what they're actually going to focus most of their time on. And in many cases, it's better to deal with the known than the unknown. So that helps to explain that part of the legislation. Finally, there's another thing to think about with understanding the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act. And it's another way to question or analyze it, which is think about what happens to the land, what provisions are affecting land in Alaska, what provisions are affecting the monetary settlement, which is important, and then what provisions are shaping the organizations, which in this case are these regional and village corporations. So that's typically when people try to read the Alaska Native Claims Settlement Act, they have a lot of questions after that first read. The best way to approach it is take one of these views and use it to read the legislation, try and pick which portions of the legislation benefit which group, and then write out questions that you have along the way. Once you've done it, give yourself a break, take a day off, come back to it again, and read it again, and it might make more sense. It typically will on a second read. Give yourself a chance to read it more than once, and it won't remain as much of a mystery as it is for most people. It's worth the reading because it's had a deep impact and continues to on the future of Alaska.
Thanks, Paul.